So again, welcome back everyone. We'll get started on our 2 o'clock session, Navigating LLCs and Cooperatives, with Anthu, who is the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Democracy at Work Institute. She will be our presenter today, so I will turn the floor over to her for her presentation.
Great, thank you so much, Kelly, and thanks everyone for joining today. My name is Anthu Nguyen. I am Director of Strategic Partnerships at Democracy at Work Institute, and I am going to start sharing my screen. So 1 second while we make this happen. Quickly. Here we go. Share. New. Quickly. Slideshow. Awesome. Are folks seeing this? I'm going to take that as a yes. All right, great. Well, thanks everybody for having me join today. My name is Anthu Nguyen. I'm Director of Strategic Partnerships at Democracy at Work Institute. And I am here speaking about how we can succeed through alternative pathways to employment. So real quickly to go through the agenda, quick welcomes, introduction, overview of my work and our work at Democracy at Work Institute, and then getting into an understanding of what's possible right now, what's the legal landscape and income options, what are alternatives to employment, and we'll get into specifics and especially focusing on the worker cooperative model for undocumented youth and students and graduates, why and how it works. And then we'll get into a case study, specific work that we're doing, developing businesses for that center the needs of individuals who have barriers to work, but they're actually inclusive, they're open to everybody. Then we'll follow up with the Q&A and then some resources and close. And I'm happy to share this presentation and linked resources to anyone at the end. All right, so a little bit myself. My name is Anthu Nguyen. Again, I'm Director of Strategic Partnerships here at Democracy at Work Institute. We are a national organization that is focused on developing and expanding democratic business ownership to people who have traditionally been locked out of our economy and locked out of good jobs, with a specific focus on low-wage workers, immigrants, and communities of color. A little bit about myself. I have a background as an attorney, and I've been working in the worker co-op space now for close to a decade. And my background, both my parents were refugees who came over from Vietnam as boat people in the 70s and 80s. And so I definitely grew up with a lot of struggle and as part of the immigrant and migrant experience, and that's informed a lot of the work that I do today. So just as a to start off, I like to problematize things like what's the issue that we are focusing on today. The big problem that we're seeking to engage, and that I imagine y'all are here for, is how do we overcome various barriers to employment, especially for people who are highly skilled and are qualified. So lack of resources for a lot of people who are first generation, there's just, lack of resources in comparison to other students and other community members. And then also a huge one, obviously, is lack of work authorization. If you don't have the work authorization, you cannot technically be a W-2 employee, right? You cannot be employed by a business. So that presents a lot of barriers, especially when you're trying to get your first job out of college. There's already so many other barriers, and then on top of that, you don't have work authorization. And then, of course, as a new graduate, a lack of experience. A lot of people have to struggle for a while, doing lots of internships, doing lots of apprenticeships, training, in order to be able to find that first job, or they know somebody, right? They know from networking, from community building. So these are all barriers that are especially exacerbated by with youth workers and youth undocumented workers. So to go in a little bit more deeply with regards to the work authorization component, where does this come from? Why do we have what we have? The Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, which is also known as IRCA, states that's illegal to knowingly employ. So if you know a person is undocumented or doesn't have work authorization, you cannot knowingly employ them. You can't do that. What it does is it requires employers to verify that every new employee is legally authorized to work in the US through the I-9 system. But there are a few exceptions to that. So if you're an independent contractor or you own your own business, you're an entrepreneur, you can use an ITIN or an EIN to legally earn a living in the US. So as long as you pay taxes. And you're not required to obtain a Form I-9 if you're an independent contractor or if you are working sporadically, like in gig work. So sporadic domestic workers. So it's like a little bit of like understanding like the law behind it all. So that gets into the how then, if you don't have work authorization, are you able to obtain income legally? There are alternatives to employment, and these opportunities are available to everybody, regardless of immigration status. First off, income generation is not the same as employment. So like when you own your own business, when you're freelancing, when you're an independent contractor, that's technically not employment under the eyes of the law. You are not a W-2 employee. And that means that you are not an employee. So what that can look like, for example, is freelance work. So independent contracting, that means that you're getting a Form 1099 when you go work, like for some kind of part-time gig as a graphic designer. It can mean being a consultant. So like you're a consultant on a project. Let's say you're working on a movie set and you're consulting on any kind of technical aspect, but you're not technically an employee. You're there for a period of time to finish a project, but you are not actually the main employee. And then also participating in the gig economy. So, if you are driving an Uber, or if you are participating on platforms like Fiverr or care.org, that's not employment. Those gigs are independent contractor gigs or freelance gigs. Another way that an alternative to employment that's not a job but is work is entrepreneurship. So that means owning your own business, and that can look like several things. One is a sole proprietorship. That means that you are out there and you are running your own business. Maybe you're incorporated. That could be like selling ice cream, for example, from an ice cream stand. It could look like a partnership legally. So that means you and another person or a group of people go in on a business together. It can be listed as a general partnership, running said ice cream stand and maybe an ice cream truck. You could also be a corporation. So corporations mean that there are shareholders. It can involve investors, and you are also one of the investors, one of the shareholders as well in that business. And then there are LLCs. So those are limited liability corporations and worker cooperatives, which can be organized through the LLC model. A worker cooperative is basically a democratically managed worker-owned business where all the members, all the workers are also owners of the business. Some other alternatives that aren't running a business or freelancing to employment for people who have barriers to it are fellowships. So that's a way can support education and professional development for all students, and you have to be students or right out of school, regardless of immigration status or work authorization. They can provide a stipend, which is a lump sum of money that aids in the pursuit of study or research. So you might have that while you're in school, or you might have that right upon graduation when you get a fellowship to do a specific area of study or do a specific project. And fellowships can be sponsored by various entities. So that includes universities, but it can also look like nonprofits that do fellowships. It can look like legal organizations, like, for example, the ACLU that offer fellowships for people who are just graduating. It can look like cities that also, like, for example, San Francisco's Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs has a Dream SF Fellows program that they sponsor and place people at local nonprofits. So a whole variety of institutions can sponsor these fellowships. Diving a little bit more deeply into independent contracting and what that looks like and why it's not actually a job or employment in the traditional sense under the tax code. So what it means when you're an independent contractor is that the client, that means the person that you are normally be working for, and if you were in the context of an employee-employer relationship, you would call them your employer, but if you're a consultant, they're your client. They only have the right to control the actual outcome of the work itself. So like, let's say you're a graphic designer and you are an independent contractor versus employee. If you're an employee who's a graphic designer, your employer can tell you when to show up, what equipment to use, how it's going to be done. Whereas if you're an independent contractor or consultant and you are a graphic designer, the only thing that the client can tell you is, we need this project done in 6 weeks and it has to look like this, but they can't tell you how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, where you have to do it. Your earnings as an independent contractor are subject to self-employment tax. And there are some common law rules that the IRS adheres to with regards to whether it is an employee-employee relationship. So it's really context specific, and it comes down to, does the relationship look like behaviorally, or are you being treated like an employee? Are you getting paid like an employee? Like, you're getting access to the same benefits like insurance, et cetera, that an employee traditionally would, even though you are technically an independent contractor. And then other aspects in terms of the type of relationship. How are you interacting with the entity you're working with or for? Do you have to show up? Do you have to work within a set time period, like daily? Are you being told how to do the work that you're doing? Those are the things that affect whether it's going to be construed as an employer or an employee relationship, or if it's going to be seen as independent contracting. So diving a little bit more deeply into entrepreneurship and starting a business, why to start a business as opposed to just being an independent contractor working as, say, let's go back to our graphic designer. Our graphic designer can be a 1099 independent contractor, or the graphic designer can say, I want to start a business. I'm going to be a solo entrepreneur. Why would incorporate my business? Why would you do that versus just being an independent contractor? Well, first, if you start your own business, there's a level of identity protection because you would get what's called an EIN, employer identification number, as opposed to having to use an ITIN or a social security. So that's the ID of the business itself. When you start a business, you also are exempt from freelancer laws. There are less questions related to immigration status and work authorization when you're working as a business, like a direct business-to-business relationship. You might have access to more financial capital, like getting loans as an incorporated business versus like you just going in by yourself as saying like, hi, I'm a person, I want a loan for something, for a personal loan. Whereas if you are a business, you can access business loans. You may be able to access larger contracts, especially with more like institutions like nonprofits or the city, with cities and municipalities. They won't work with individuals, but they will work with vendors who are established businesses. And then it's also more cost effective to start your own business as well. So you have access to a variety of benefits and discounts that you can only get if you're an incorporated business. So again, just to reiterate the different types of businesses that are out there, that includes sole proprietorship. It means you are the owner of your own business, and that's it. That's just you. You might hire other people, but you are the incorporated sole proprietor. There's partnerships, which is you and other people start a business together with as partners, an equal share. There's C corporations, which are businesses where y'all are the shareholders of the business and run the business as shareholders. And then there are LLCs, which are kind of like in between sole proprietorships and C corporations. It's a limited liability company, and it provides protections under law, but it's flexible in terms of taxation. And then there's worker cooperative businesses, which can also be organized as LLCs. So what that means is that the workers are the owners and have both equal share as owners, and then equal decision-making power as worker owners. So that was like a really fast intro to different ways of working, when different ways that are not technically employment. Cooperatives might be something that's new to a lot of you, because it's not something that's often taught in business schools, or much, and we don't see much of those in the United States, but there are quite a few. But I'll get into like basics of what a cooperative business is. So cooperatives are businesses with shared ownership that operate according to a set of principles, and those principles include open membership, democratic decision-making, cooperation amongst cooperatives, concern for community, amongst others. I like to call them the original social enterprise. There are different kinds of cooperatives, which you might have run into in your time just being around. So there are producer cooperatives like Ocean Spray, Organic Valley. These are usually a bunch of businesses in one industry that to pool their resources so that they can share marketing, share distribution, share equipment. You see a lot of that in farming specifically. You see consumer cooperatives. So if you think about a famous example is REI. REI is a consumer cooperative. That means that if you shop at the co-op and you're a member, every time you buy something, you will get a percentage back because you are a member and you share in the profits of the company based on how much you purchase. A worker cooperative, which is what I'm going to focus on, is a worker-owned and democratically controlled business. So that means the members are the workers. With a consumer co-op, the members are the consumers. With a producer co-op, the members are the members are the producers. The members are the consumers for a consumer cooperative, and the members are the workers of a worker cooperative. And a multi-stakeholder co-op can be any of the above, and any combination of the above. So you can have a grocery store that's both owned by the consumers and by the workers themselves, who have a say in decision making and also receive a cut of the surplus, as it's called. That's real quick. Different kinds of co-ops. But why are we talking about worker co-ops, and why am I emphasizing worker co-ops specifically in this presentation? So there's a number of reasons besides, the work authorization barrier. But a lot of times, being an independent contractor or like just having your own LLC and just like running it by yourself, it can be quite burdensome. There's a lot going on. It can be quite stressful to just like run everything by yourself. And it's a lot to navigate, especially when there are so many other things in the world and in life to navigate coming out of college. With shared entrepreneurship and worker ownership, people are able to share that burden together in terms of like running a business together and owning a business together, and all the different aspects that it can engage, like marketing, operations and administration, finances, and so on. It's people as a group, many hands making lighter work. And then also values alignment. So worker cooperative businesses center community, good business principles, being engaged and part of and contributing to the community, as opposed to a more extractive model. That's a lot of reasons why people want to start worker cooperative businesses. In immigrant cooperatives have a rich history in the United States, especially in the last few decades. So traditionally, worker co-ops came out of spaces where there was people just needed to pull resources together, which is why you saw them a lot in rural areas. And then in recent decades, with with low-wage immigrant workforces rising, it became a way for people who are newly arrived to the country or have been here for a while, but you don't have much capital to be able to pull their resources together, start businesses, and also improve their working conditions, especially in low-wage workforces like home health care, cleaning, and childcare. These are areas where there's like a very high percentage of immigrant and BIPOC workers who traditionally haven't been treated well at all and don't get paid well, and work oftentimes through agencies that take a significant percentage off the top. So developing worker cooperatives, especially in these industries and with these communities, is a way to like not just improve working conditions and get people better paid by cutting out that middleman, but also create an opportunity to build wealth in what are traditionally pretty low wage professions. The LLC cooperative model innovated on the existing LLC model, using it because of its flexibility and access to work, while also using the worker cooperative structure and process, which means creating the bylaws, operating agreement, so that resources, risk, profits, decision-making, and benefits could be shared. All of the benefits of being in the business, and then also all the benefits that are being doing it as a shared member-based and member-led entity. There's currently, at this point, well over 400, about 500 really, known worker cooperatives in the U.S. And immigrant worker owners are the fastest growing demographic as of the last National Worker Cooperative Census. In recent years, especially with the rise in anti-immigrant sentiment and the larger visibility of dreamers and undocumented workers, and advocacy and activism and organizing in the community, we have seen a need to innovate on the worker co-op model, on the LLC cooperative model that has existed for the past couple decades, that could be set up quickly and accessible to people who are locked out of good jobs. People who are recently graduating from college, for example, who have opportunities to work but can't because of their status. So our solution to that is developing what's called rapid response cooperatives. These are franchise-like. They are member-managed LLCs that we develop in partnership with community organizations, with universities, cities across the country. So we launched in LA and New York City pilots. And in New York City really took off with the Institute of Mexican Studies at CUNY, working with the Beca Scholarship Program there. And then from then on, we moved and started a relationship and a partnership with San Francisco OSEA and a Dream SF Fellows Program. And now we are starting projects in Seattle, in Texas, Colorado, Orange County, really, and North Carolina as well. Many of the rapid response cooperatives fall under the brand of Radiate Consulting. So this especially centers the skills and talents of young professionals who are coming out of these fellowship programs, who already have been a lot of training, been placed as interns, been placed as fellows at a variety of community justice organizations, immigrant direct services organizations. And now they're using their skills to bring in clients and to continue doing good work in the community. So how does a rapid response cooperative work? Like a classic worker co-op, it's shared entrepreneurship, people who want to own a business together. pull together resources and back office support instead of, 5 different people getting 5 different LLCs and trying to do it all by themselves. They just pull their resources so that they can share in that work. They have shared values. And also, as a worker owner, you're not an employee, but you are an owner member of the cooperative business. So you're working with clients and you're getting paid out as an owner of your business. What does that look like as a business with shared ownership that, again, operates to a set of principles? Members invest in the business. That's an integral part of being a member owner. So you have to invest some skin in the game in it. There's decision-making power, 1 more for 1 vote. And then also a rapid response cooperative, which is super helpful, especially for people who are just entering the workforce and starting to work with clients. There is a member administrator that helps handle back office management. So everything from invoicing, clients, which can definitely take up a lot of work, all the operations, admin aspects of running a business, bookkeeping, sending out, reminders, following up with clients after the relationship has concluded to get their feedback, like the kind of like day-to-day operations and admin taxes, making sure that people are paying their taxes. That's important, very important. These are the aspects that the member admin covers. The rapid response cooperative also provides protection. So when you're an independent contractor, you're working directly with the organization you're working with. That might be a little bit scary. You might not really want to have that level of exposure by virtue of your position and what's happening. And then also you would want to if you want to access benefits, it's best to do so. And really the only way to do so is to do it by through the own entity that you're a member of, the business that you own. So you're able to continue having a working relationship while also protecting yourself. So this is a win-win proposition for both the clients and the worker owners by being a part of a rapid response cooperative. The client, it's a business-to-business relationship as opposed to the independent contracting relationship. The members are compensated as owners and not as employees or contractors. So it's pretty straightforward in that way. Clearly not an employee. And then cooperative handles all of the operations, kind of all the nitty-gritty aspects so that members can actually do the work that they want to do, whether it's interpretation and translation or facilitation, organizing, and so on. So of our, like I said, the rapid response cooperatives, like one of them or one of our brands, the brand is Radiate Consulting, focusing on the needs of and services of young professionals. And we currently have 5 branches in New York, San Francisco Bay Area, Orange County, North Carolina, and Colorado. So check it out, www.radiateconsulting.coop. This is the New York City team, as you can see. And I want to highlight Radiate Bay Area specifically. This is their mission. They are a consulting co-op of makers and solvers. We developed it in collaboration with the TREAM-SF Fellows Program, with the City of San Francisco Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs. The members do it all. They do lots of nonprofit, small business support work, from interpretation and translation, bookkeeping, graphic design, marketing, and so on. Some resources that I'm happy to share afterwards in terms of what's available, what's accessible for folks that are just looking for opportunities to develop their career outside of the traditional employer-employee pathway. And then you can always reach out to me. This is my information, atingwing@institute.coop, and I will share it after as well.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. So a wealth of resources for our students. What I'd like to do at this time is to open it up to the participants to see if you have any questions. I know it's a lot of information to process, so why don't I start off? So what would you say are some of the qualities that a recent graduate would need to be successful with a cooperative?
I think being collaborative, being entrepreneurial, have like a real sense of like teamwork, and like if you are successful, if you have a group of friends and you're successful in getting a project done with other people, you can succeed in a worker co-op. But it does take a lot of like, compromise and also engagement. Like you got to go to meetings, you got to engage with your team members, with your fellow worker owners, in order to solve problems, or if there's like conflicts. But I think that if you are, the kind of person who really thrives in working together with others and like doing a project together, and having that kind of like back and forth as peers and equals, you'll succeed in the worker cooperative business. And then also being entrepreneurial, of course. Like it's not for everybody. Like we never say it's never prescriptive. Like you have to be in a worker co-op when you leave college. Like there's plenty of people who succeed. Some people just like working on their own, right? Like, and those are people who are successful running their own, like as solo entrepreneurs, or just kind of like having their solo their solo gigs or hustles. But if you want to do this with other people and you want a collaborative workspace, then worker co-ops are the way to go.
If students are interested in building their own workers co-op, where would you recommend them to start? Or, is there any mentors out there, like mentorship program out there that would be able to like kind of help them through the process?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. I mean, like off the bat, if you just want to learn more about what it looks like to start a worker cooperative business, our partner, the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives, does a webinar every first Friday of the month. It's a startup co-op webinar, so just learn more about the process. There's a few resources that I'll share, and I'll share out the my presentation as well to share out to students. DAWI, our Democracy at Work Institute, we have a lot of resources in English and in Spanish on how to start a worker co-op. It can be quite dense and can get quite technical, so I'll just say that off the top, that like it can be a little bit to navigate, but if you really want to learn more, you can go deep. And then also at DAWI, we incubate a lot of worker cooperatives. So we are incubating the rapid response cooperative model. We're doing projects in collaboration with universities, with career centers, to create this pipeline. So you want to be in a worker co-op, we can facilitate that. So that's like what we're working with UTRGV, for example, and working with CUNY. And if you want to just start it on your own, mentorship, U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives is great, depending on where you are and what community you live in. So like in New York City, a chapter of the Federation is the New York City Network of Worker Co-ops. They have a training collaborative, and people who want to like learn how to start their own co-ops can reach out to them to learn more. So those are some off the top of my head in terms of like support networks.
And since you were talking about institutions partnering, so how can Kelly and myself, partner with you to get something started for our students?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something we can go a lot more deeply into. But what we find really valuable about educational institutions that have like a specific vision for this is having that developed talent pipeline. So our success so far with CUNY's Institute of Mexican Studies is that they have this scholarship and fellowship program. It's called the Becas program. And so it's a 4-year program that is like, it's a cohort. People are engaged from day one. They're already like doing placements, like apprenticeships and internships with like different community organizations. And so when they're ready, when they're graduated, they're trained up, right? They know what to do. They already know each other and have the trust. And they're already working closely together in different ways, like and just kind of ready to just kind of take it to that next level by starting a business together, being engaged in a business together. So we're doing some exciting work with University of Texas, with the Rio Grande Valley, because they have extremely strong interpretation and translation program. And graduates from that program that's what we're hoping would be able to be a pipeline of talent and continue to have career development opportunities through this cooperative that we developed with in collaboration with them. So yeah, that's like some examples, and it's really about like what y'all's needs are and like what your talent pipeline looks like, right? Like what the students need, what the students are doing, what is the market. Like we work together to do feasibility studies, business plans, to just make sure that like the cooperative that's being developed meets the needs of your community. So it's very contextual and specific to each community we work with.
Yeah, this was great. I know this was a topic that Marie and I really were excited to learn more about, and we've talked about opportunities for students regardless of work authorization. And I think this was one of the ways we were the least familiar with. So I want to thank you again. This was very valuable information. So Maria will have to do a little more research.
Yeah, and we're happy to speak more as well, and also introduce y'all to some of the worker owners. You can speak more to their experiences as well. A lot of them are like, they're coming straight out of college or out of grad school, and this is kind of like their first full-time work as like a owner of their own business, and consulting within community organizations. So it's cool to see that development and trajectory growth.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, so I want to thank Antu for her presentation today. Thank you all for participating. We do have our next session will start at 3:15.